Welcome to this deep dive into one of the most common and persistent vulnerabilities on the web, cross-site scripting, or as you'll usually see it, XSS. As our web applications get more and more complex, the ways they can be attacked also get more sophisticated. Understanding XSS isn't just for dedicated security pros. It's an absolutely fundamental skill for anyone involved in building for the web.
Okay, so here's our game plan. We're going to start with the fundamentals, what exactly is XSS? Then we'll get into the specifics and break down the three main types. After that, we'll put on our attacker hats and see how these flaws are actually found and what someone can do with them. And of course, we'll wrap up with the most important part, how to defend against these attacks.
All right, let's start right at the beginning. To really understand how to stop XSS, we first have to get a solid grasp of what it is and why it's still one of the biggest threats in web security today. At its heart, XSS is a client-side vulnerability. So think of it this way. Instead of attacking the web server directly, the attacker cleverly uses the website itself as a launchpad to attack its visitors. The whole vulnerability hinges on one thing: a web app taking input from one user and then displaying it to another user without properly cleaning, or as we say, sanitizing it first. This right here shows the classic attack flow. So an attacker finds an input field, could be a comment box, a search bar, you name it, and injects a piece of malicious JavaScript. Now, if the application isn't built securely, it might just go ahead and store that script. Later on, when an unsuspecting user visits the page, their browser gets served that malicious script. And because the browser trusts the website, it just runs it. No questions asked. And believe me, this isn't just some textbook theory. These real-world examples show that even the biggest platforms on the planet are not immune. From the infamous Sammy worm that basically took over MySpace to vulnerabilities found in Google itself, these attacks prove that XSS has been a massive, persistent threat for decades. Now, not all XSS attacks are created equal. It's really important to know that XSS isn't just one single thing. Let's break it down into its three main categories, because understanding these distinctions is absolutely crucial for both finding and fixing these vulnerabilities. This table gives us a great side-by-side comparison. First, you've got stored XSS. It's called persistent because the malicious script gets saved directly on the server, like in a database. Think of a poisoned comment in a forum. Then there's reflected XSS. This one's non-persistent. The script isn't stored, but instead is reflected off the web server, usually from a malicious link that a victim is tricked into clicking. And finally, you have DOM-based XSS, which is also non-persistent, but the vulnerability exists entirely in the client-side code, meaning the malicious data might never even touch the server. So what's the big takeaway here? It all comes down to the impact. Stored XSS is often seen as the most dangerous because the attacker's payload gets delivered to every single user who visits that compromised page. It's a fire-and-forget weapon. Reflected and DOM-based attacks, on the other hand, are much more targeted. They require some form of social engineering to get a specific victim to click a specially crafted link. Okay, now that we understand the different types, let's switch gears and explore the practical side of things. How do we actually discover these vulnerabilities? This is where an offensive mindset really comes into play, whether you're a penetration tester or a developer doing a security audit. When you're hunting for XSS, you've really got two main approaches. You've got automated discovery, using scanners that can quickly fire off thousands of known attack payloads and analyze the results. It's fast, and it covers a lot of ground. But then you have manual discovery. This is where skill and intuition really shine. We're talking about carefully crafting custom payloads, testing things that scanners might miss, and, the most reliable method of all, performing a detailed review of the source code itself. And here's a perfect example of an automated tool in action. This tool, XSStrike, is being pointed at a URL with a specific parameter, task equals test. It starts probing, and it discovers that whatever it sends in that task parameter gets reflected back in the page's HTML. So the tool identifies the flaw and then generates a working payload, the actual malicious script. This one's pretty clever. It's designed to execute code just when a user's mouse moves over it, which is a neat trick to bypass some basic security filters. Now, manual testing is a systematic process. It means you're testing every single place user input can get into the application. We're not just talking about forms, we're talking about HTTP headers like cookies and the user agent string. Testers usually start with simple payloads and then get more and more creative, using things like HTML event handlers. But ultimately, the best approach is a full code review. You trace the flow of data from its source, where the user input comes in,
all the way to its sink, where it gets displayed on the page. Discovering a vulnerability is one thing, but understanding its real-world impact is another. So let's dig into what a malicious actor can actually achieve by exploiting one of these flaws. This step-by-step process shows just how an attacker can weaponize a simple reflected XSS flaw to pull off a convincing phishing attack. They can inject a completely fake HTML login form onto a website you trust. They can even remove the original page elements to make it look totally legitimate. When a user enters their credentials, the form doesn't go to the real site. It sends them straight to a server the attacker controls. Game over. And phishing is just the tip of the iceberg. An attacker can steal a user's session cookies and completely hijack their logged-in session. With stored XSS, they can deface a website, altering its appearance for every single visitor. They can install a keylogger to capture everything a user types. They can even turn the victim's browser into a silent cryptocurrency miner, all without the user knowing a thing. Finally, and most importantly, let's cover how to defend ourselves. Discovering and exploiting vulnerabilities is one thing, but preventing them in the first place? That's the ultimate goal of any security professional. A robust defense is a layered defense. You can't just do one thing. It has to happen on both the front end and the back end. Think of the front end as your first line of defense. It does the initial checks, but, and this is critical, the back end is where your authoritative security controls must live, because a determined attacker can always bypass anything on the client side. So on the front end, defense starts at the source. First, you validate the data. Make sure an email address actually looks like an email. Simple sanity check. Second, you sanitize it, and please don't try to write your own sanitizer. Use a trusted, battle-tested library like DOM Purify to strip out any dangerous HTML. And critically, you have to avoid dangerous syncs. These are JavaScript functions like .innerHTML that will interpret user-provided text as active code. They're a loaded gun. On the back end, you have to revalidate everything, assuming the front-end controls have already been bypassed. But the most important technique here is output encoding. This is paramount. It's how you tell the browser to treat user data as plain text to be displayed, not as code to be executed. It neutralizes the threat. On top of that, you can add powerful extra layers of defense, like configuring a content security policy, or CSP, and setting the HTTP-only flag on cookies to shield them from JavaScript. If you take away only one single thing from this module, let it be this. This is the fundamental principle. Treat every single piece of data that comes from a user as if it's potentially hostile. If you apply that principle consistently, you are well on your way to building a secure web application. And that leaves us with a final thought. With the rise of these incredibly complex front-end frameworks, think React, Angular, Vue, and more more logic moving to the client side, the attack surface for vulnerabilities like DOM-based XSS is just growing bigger and bigger. It ensures that this continuous cat and mouse game between attackers and defenders is only going to get more sophisticated from here.